Good morning. My grandfather was born in Germany and raised there, and he left in the 1930s when he was 19, and he took me back there on a trip when I was 19. This was 3 years after the Berlin Wall had come down, and my grandmother had told me a story about a trip that my grandfather, and my grandmother had taken years earlier, and they had gone to Berlin, and they crossed the border into East Germany when the wall was still up. And my grandfather is a lot like myself, has a big rebellious, doesn't like to be told what to do kind of streak and vibe. And she said that crossing the border with those guards, he towed the line like she'd never seen before. He knew what that fearful kind of system was capable of, and he took no chances crossing the border and just followed the rules, did whatever they said, whatever he had to do to get through it and not get hassled or questioned or anything. And so here I am, 19, going to Europe for the first time, and go to Berlin and cross the border. And I'd heard the stories. I knew enough about what went on there, and it was eerie. It was like a ghost town, and yet there were like signs of rubble where the wall had been, the guard posts, things like that, and it had a vibe about it that was kind of spooky. And I think my grandfather wanted to see it for himself, that it was down, and he wanted me to see it from my own eyes, that like kind of what people are capable of and what can happen, and when fear gets the better of people, when there's this they had a whole system of like secret police and surveillance, and the Stasi was infamous, notorious for the things they did, and so scared of the own people that the constant surveillance and afraid of ideas, or people might leave or something else come in, but just when fear rules the day, crazy stuff can happen. And so my grandfather, growing up in Germany during and after World War I, and there were all kinds of tactics employed, both by the German and the other, and all this, and lots of political machinery working, and shortages of stuff, and destroying of systems and machinery and it led to actual starvation and for a number of reasons, and so the reality of putting food on the table became a thing. It was a trauma and a thing in the culture of like a legitimate concern about starving to death and not having enough. And as a young man, a teenager looking at, 18, 19-year-old looking for work in Germany in the late 1930s, my grandfather noticed that all, if not, most, if not all the jobs went to those that were in the party, in the Nazi party, or loyal to the party. And that there was a preferential thing, and combine that with this, like a real scarcity and then like a favoritism and cronyism kind of thing, and it just seemed like a no-win kind of situation, or there was only two choices. You join the party, go along to get along, or have to leave and go to a foreign land where you don't speak the language and start over. And so that's what my grandfather did. He left. And obviously I didn't see my grandfather as a young man. I didn't get to experience that time or know how he felt or what that was like. I just saw him much later as an older man. And I saw several other Germans from his generation who left right before the war, during the war, and a lot of them have that similar rageaholic, for lack of a better word, like that real stern and what's right is right, he would often say. And my sense of it, a lot of people would refer to my grandfather as the biggest ass. Like a lot of people thought he was a jerk and didn't like how he behaved, and I totally understand that. At the same time, I think a lot of it was trauma, just having to leave, being forced to leave your homeland, a lot of anger, but also knowing what happened in the 40s and with all the Holocaust and the atrocities and the murders and all that, just a horrific thing, but a lot of guilt, a feeling of like maybe if they had stayed, they could have done something, or they might have been able to stop it or speak up, or anything along those lines. Even if that's an unrealistic thing, there's still got to be a lot of guilt and shame around, or even post after it, feeling like somehow because they're German, they're blamed somehow for it. And so just, it's not without cost, whether someone leaves or not. It's a traumatic thing all the way around for everyone involved, and that real fearful, seeing the other as a threat, and it just leads to bad things in a cycle of violence and perpetuating the thing. The old saying, violence begets violence, or we reap what we sow. And if we're planting the seeds of fear, we're going to grow fear, and it's going to spread. And as a kid, my grandfather was in the Hitler Youth, and to hear him talk about it, he said he compared it to the Boy Scouts of America, in the sense that it was just something socially acceptable that kids did, and they didn't think anything of it. It wasn't seen from inside. It wasn't seen as anything bad, or it didn't have. Maybe all the horrible stuff didn't happen in the Hitler Youth. That happened much later in different branches of whatever training they had. But just, and I say that to illustrate how these things seem innocent and like no big deal, but then we find out much later that kind of culture of fear and uniform thinking and towing the line can lead to crazy stuff. And we need to pay attention when that kind of pattern, that virus of fear, is running the day, and any attempt to say otherwise is being quieted, or there's all kinds of weird stuff going on to try to keep people from dissenting or saying anything other than what the official narrative is. And I think we all know, we've all seen the movies, heard the stories of how horrible the Holocaust was and all the horrible things that were going on, and how, and a lot of the stuff I've seen and read, it was a gradual process. It started with, we're just going to do the identification. We're going to have the armbands. And then, we're just going to do a temporary relocation from, your homes to this other place in the city. It's just temporary, and we're just going to do it for a while in these emergency crisis measures. And then, that's not enough. We need to move from, these camps in the city to these other places outside the city for everyone's, safety and protection. And then the further these steps go, the crazier the stuff that happens, and the more removed the what's going on is from the public eye, the more insane it gets, and the more horrible and atrocious the stuff that's done gets. And it's so when I heard about this thing on a CDC website about shielding, I think it's called, and I think it was written a couple years ago, and it talks about separating people and isolating based on high risk, low risk, and relocating them to camps in different areas. And I'm just like, is this, when I first heard about it, I thought it was a joke. I was like, this can't be real, to really and to have it be public and on the website and available for anyone it just seemed crazy, but there it was. And I don't know where any of this is going, or if there's some nefarious plan or anything. That for me, it's not about any of that. It's more like just looking at what happens in history, and when we give away our power and we designate some external authority to do what's good for us, or what basically give up all our autonomy to let somebody else run the show, it usually leads to horrible results. And so my hope is that we learn the lesson from the 20th century, the bloodbath that it was, and how the millions upon millions of people were killed and all kinds of insane stuff was done, that we learn the lessons from that and start to question and reclaim our power and get back to a system where everybody wins. Because even in those systems where of top crushes those underneath, the people at the top don't win. It's not a good system. It's a system of anxiety and fear, and you're never safe, and you always have to look out, you always got to watch over your shoulder, because there's already somebody who wants to knock you off and take the spot of power and seize the reins and that kind of thing. And nobody wins in that system. Nobody's safe. There's no peace. There's no being able to rest. And definitely nobody gets taken care of. it's not a healthy system. Look at the Soviets and the gulags and the mass starvations and things like that. People are not taken care of when we give up our autonomy and our authority, and the history has proven that. And so my hope is that we've learned the lesson and we start to reclaim our power and see what we can do on our own end to stay healthy and to take care of our neighbors and each other. So thanks for watching.